Disclaimer: the information provided on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as financial advice. We are not licensed financial professionals, and any opinions shared are based on personal experiences and research. As always, do your own due diligence and consult with a certified financial advisor or professional before making any investment decisions.
All right, so welcome back. We are here. So we're here, episode 10. So definitely glad to drop this episode. My bad, it was supposed to be out last week, but I'm here recording today. Just got pretty busy, and we got a candle event coming up. So if you're in the Martinsburg area, we will be at the Roundhouse this weekend on the 7th for Comic-Con. So definitely interested in participating in that. This will be our first event back since the relaunch. So, that's always exciting. So definitely give you guys an update on how that went. And then if you follow our candle page for Kai's Wigs as well, I'll make sure to drop an update in there 100%. So today what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about lifestyle creep, and then we're going to talk about keeping up with the Joneses. So if you're around my age, you're probably starting to see some more income coming into your pockets compared to what was coming in a couple years ago. Whether if you got a promotion and job, whether if you finally moved in with someone, whether you're getting started in a career, which automatically gave you additional pay, depending on where you were at in your prior job. So, we're going to talk about lifestyle creep here a little bit today, how that can really, derail you from your future goals and where you can go, where you want to go. So, basically what the lifestyle creep is once you get paid, instead of using that money the right way, or, quote unquote, the right way, you essentially go spend on other things that you may not necessarily need, but now you can afford. So definitely an interesting video. Definitely excited to be here, be back. Thank you for all the love and the support. Make sure you guys hit the like, share button. It definitely helps the channel out. And here we go. We're going to get started. All right. So what is lifestyle creep? All right. So the true definition of lifestyle creep is when a person's spending increases as their income increases. So instead of saving or investing the extra money, they gradually upgrade their lifestyle. So for example, they may go out to eat more. They may upgrade. Okay, I got this extra pay. Let me go ahead and get this nicer car, which you may not need a new car, but you just want a nicer car. Moving into a bigger or more expensive house, which that can derail you a lot bigger than a lot of other things, because that's a 30-year commitment. So that can really set you back if you really can't afford the house, or if you can make the payments on the mortgage, but you can't do anything else, outside of your home. So, we all fall victim to this. So that's why I thought it was a perfect opportunity. If I knew this information, or if I had this knowledge when I was younger, I probably would have changed things. But, here we are. As I say, lost dollars trying to learn lessons. So unfortunately, you just had to go through life in order to gain those valuable money lessons. But a couple cons about the lifestyle creep, right? So you can get a raise, and it can make you still feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck, because technically you're not really giving yourself a cushion. You're just buying additional things. So non-essential expenses become the regular and come the norm. So maybe that's like your coffee runs. Maybe you're going shopping more. Maybe you are having the bigger type of holidays, things of that nature, right? Your saving rate may stay the same, or it may even decrease as your income increases, because again, you're in the mindset now that, okay, I'm able to afford these things. So I would say you can pay for them, but you can't really technically afford them. And again, this is something that's, really derailed me in my journey, because, anytime I got a raise through my journey, I would just spend that raise instead of actually saving, and trying to invest into that. So again, it just takes time. It takes mistakes. It takes having people around you who, understand money. It takes having a mentor, or eventually, you become that mentor. You become that person who's going to, look into and do your research and try to, save for tomorrow. So another thing it can prevent long-term wealth building, because you're moving your money into the wrong places. So again, you want to buy assets. So, buying a car is not really an asset until you pay it off. And then even then when you pay it off, it's not, you don't really earn on that asset, because your car depreciates over time. I mean, as soon as you drive off the lot, sign that paper, your car depreciates. So, it can really set you back from what you're trying to do, because instead of taking that money and putting it in vehicles to grow, you're taking that money and putting it into things to make it look like you're keeping up with the Joneses, which again we'll go over a little later in the video. So it can also lead to financial stress during emergencies or economic downturns. So as you guys heard throughout the news to start the year, still up in the air based on what we're seeing, but it doesn't seem like a chance for recessions at 50% based on where it was a couple months ago. But prices are still going to go up, and you never know when an economic downturn comes. So it's always nice to prepare for that. So when you're really having that financial stress, and you get more money and you're still seeing that financial stress, that's really a time to kind of sit back and take a look at your budget and sit back and take a look what you're spending your money on. Because I promise, once you sit back and take a look what you're actually spending on, you'll be surprised on how much money that you can actually save. So, maybe you are able to, still go out to eat the same rate, but you can still save, right? So try to find a middle ground when you are trying to navigate getting a raise, getting a bonus, getting a promotion, whatever the case may be, right? So when you get additional income, try to find ways to where you can not only save but invest that income, and then still try to meet in the middle to where you can still enjoy life, right? So then it also creates a cycle where you're always needing more income to sustain the new norm. So your new norm is just going to be you feeling your debt rate, right? So you're just feeling your debt, you're feeling your debt, you're feeling your debt, because you're seeing what other people have and you're getting that money, and in your mind you're like, okay, now I can actually afford this. So let me go ahead and let me actually buy this. But in retrospect, no one really cares what house you have or what car that you drive. These are things I've said on earlier videos, when I first launched the podcast, is that no one really cares about those things. Is it cool to have? Yes, but you should only have those to impress A, yourself, and B, if only you can truly afford those things. All right, so again, early on in this journey for me, both saving and investing, been learning a lot. It's been up and down, a lot of red days, a lot of green days. One thing that I picked up early on through all this and trying to avoid the lifestyle creep, from what I used to do, is I start looking at money in a percentage base. So obviously, you still want to look at the dollar value because that's important as well. But you want to look at percentages, right? So let's just say you earn 50K a year, 60K a year, but you're able to save, 15 to 20% of your income because maybe you have low debt, maybe you live with your parents still, whatever the case may be. All in all, end of the day, it's what the dollar value and the percent is. And that dollar value and percentage, you have that 15 to 20% savings rate, making 50K. Now take someone who makes 120K or 150, 200K, but they followed that lifestyle creep. So the more money they get, the more debt they went into, and the bigger and the more expensive things that they bought. They may be able to only save 5 to 7% of their pay. So all in all, even though they're making crazy amount more than you, your saving rate is compensating for what they make. So you won't see it in the first 5 to 10 years, but maybe, if you start at 20, right? You start at 21, even if you start at 25, in 20 years, when you really start seeing that savings explode and you start seeing your portfolio explode, that's due to your habits and your saving habit. Now that person may have a bunch of money on paper, but they also have a bunch of debt on paper. So that's really setting them back. So yeah, they make that 100K, 120, 200K, whatever the case may be, they make that now. But remember, you gotta put in inflation. So if their yearly raises, bonuses, whatever, if that's not keeping up with inflation, then they're really setting themselves behind, because while you're gaining through investing, through saving, through compounding interest, they're losing through interest payments and loan payments, mortgage payments, car payments, on top of all the interest on top of that. over the years. So that tends to take away from their buying power while you're adding to your buying power. So that's why I'm saying, when you're talking about, the lifestyle creep and the power it has if you can avoid it, man, you can really set yourself up, even as someone who may have that doctor title, what the case may be. Like, you can be an average Joe, and as long as you have the, right habits, then you can necessarily you can make your money, and you can grow your money over time. So don't, look at, how much you make an hour. So if you're at 20, 15, you find ways to find more income if you can. But, if you're low on debt right now, you're making that type of money, save it, start investing it, while you're young. That's really when you're going to start seeing the fruits of time really impact and really grow your portfolio. So you definitely want to save that over time. And by doing that, you have to avoid the lifestyle creep, which is extremely hard to do because you go on social media, you see what they have on TikTok, you see what they have on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, whatever the case may be. Just know that's not really the norm. You're probably seeing the same 20 people on your reels, so that's not really the norm of what Americans typically live. So keep that in mind and do your research, right? So see where you're at. I always thought that I was so far behind, but once I started looking into it, I started to see like, okay, like I'm in a much better spot than what I realized compared to, America in general. So, do your research, and you may feel better about yourself. And, you may see that, where you're at now, you can grow off of that. In order to do that, you got to avoid that lifestyle creep. All right. So you ever heard of keeping up with the Joneses? I'm sure you have. If you haven't, basically what keeping up with the Joneses refers to is the act of comparing your social and economic status of that to your peers. So this often leads to unnecessary spending and or financial pressure that you don't need to really put on yourself. So this really started in the early 1900s with the phrase keeping up with the Joneses. I believe it was in the newspaper as like one of those comic sketches that they used to have in the newspapers. So basically what it's saying is you're comparing yourself to your friends or your peers, and you're trying to essentially keep up. So, for example, maybe you're seeing, your family member, your friend, whatever the case may be, someone real close to you, your co-workers, they may be getting new cars, they may be getting new houses, things like that, like the much bigger expenses, right? So, if you're seeing all this and maybe you're not financially ready for a new house, or you maybe not financially ready for a new car, but it's that pride in you that wants to say, well, they can do it, I can do it, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good financial decision. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have that good financial decision. So just because they get a new car, just because they get a new house, doesn't mean A, they properly save for it, B, they actually have a down payment for it, or B, may not even be ready yet. But they just they say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to buy it, X, Y, and Z. Again, going back to what I said earlier in the video, you can buy this massive house that you can afford on paper or pay for on paper, but doesn't necessarily mean you can afford, right? So, you got to you got to really think about these things when you're talking about trying to keep up with the Joneses. Listen, you're never going to keep up with the Joneses because the richer you get, the richer they get, right? So that's the whole idea behind the phrase is, keeping up with your peers, keeping up with what you're seeing on social media, things like that. Again, end of the day, that's all materialistic. And I think that's what people say when they say like money can't buy you love and things like that, right? So, or happiness, whatever the case may be. I kind of disagree with the statement, but I agree in a sense of when it comes to, keeping up with the Joneses, like that, what you're trying to buy may not necessarily be something that you necessarily need, and it can really set you back, and you can be more miserable than you were just kind of maintaining your normal lifestyle. So, it's those people who drive the Honda Civics. It's those people who drive like the older cars. It's those people who may still live in a smaller house that you really start seeing their portfolio grow because they're living under their means, right? So they're, Angel Reese is a perfect example, right? she complains about, the type of salary that she gets through the WNBA, and then like her housing situation. End of the day, if you can't afford it, you shouldn't get it, right? So there's nothing to complain about. That taking that effort, complaining, go, you're basically a national superstar in the women's leagues, right? So go find a way to, generate more revenue to, promote your lifestyle or cut back. So, but that's like an example there when I'm talking about trying to keep up with your peers and keep up with what you're seeing. Um, you know, it's personal finance, so it's your journey. You should take your time. Your time is going to come because the stuff that you're seeing may not necessarily be something that you necessarily mean. And honestly, you probably wouldn't even care if you didn't know that person. How many nice cars that you see a day that you don't care about? How many nice houses that you see a day that you don't care about? Keep that same mindset. Now, you still want to be obviously happy for your friends. You want to support them. Well, if you agree with the decision or not, it's not your pockets. So you still want to always, show that love and support for them. It's a new adventure for them. It's an exciting time. But for me personally, it's just something that not really interested in having that mindset of keeping up with the Joneses anymore. Perfect example would be, we bought our house during COVID. So, we call it a COVID rate. As you saw right now, interest rates are over 7% recently. It looks like house prices are starting to fall a little bit. But even then, what I'm paying now, why would I move? Could I move? 100%. 100% I could. I don't really need to. The money that we're saving right now could go towards paying down the debt that we built up and then ultimately flipping around to investing and saving. And then I can buy a later house through delayed gratification, which we're going to talk about next. But I can wait. I can wait. I can put money aside. I can do it right. We necessarily didn't even buy this house correctly, the right way. But, it was just an offer that I really couldn't pass up. And it seemed to, that was a risk that I took. And it seems to be working out. But again, that was a risk that, buying a house is expensive, but the amount of money and the rate I got my house is nowhere near what we got right now. So, if you do buy a new house recently, or if you see your peers, your friends buying a new house recently, it doesn't necessarily that you have to buy it. Be smart, collect your information, set a game plan, stick to your game plan, and your game plan is going to work out. All right, so if you follow the channel, earlier in my episodes, you heard me mention about like fear, getting started, things of that nature, and how that can be one of the hardest part of your financial journey, which is true. So the first step's always the hardest step. Putting your debts down, putting your monthly bills down, going through statements, that can be mentally draining as you get started. But everyone starts somewhere, right? We're going to talk about delayed gratification, which is, to me, even to this day, is one of the hardest parts about, my financial journey. So basically what delayed gratification is, the ability to resist an immediate reward. So this is basically in order for you to get a bigger or better reward in the future, where you may not have to take as much debt down. You may not even have to use a credit card. You can save up for it, whatever the case may be. So one example, easy math is, you see something that may cost $1,000, but you don't necessarily need it now. You make a 5-month plan, 10-month plan, whatever, to buy it. 5-month, maybe you put $200 aside to get it. 10-month, you put $100 aside to get it. That's just simple math, but that's kind of the concept of it. Is I don't really need it now, but let me save for it because it's going to be there when I'm ready to buy it. This is definitely can be the hardest part of the financial journey because it's a mental game, and this journey is not for the mentally weak. You definitely have to. I mean, I know it sounds bad to say, but realistically, you have to be okay with seeing red, okay with losing some money, in order to make money. It's going to happen. This is all really a mental preparation game. If you're able to, mentally prepare and create good habits, they become the norm. Just like with money, you can make good habits so that it becomes the norm. But back to delayed gratification, I do believe this is one of the hardest parts of the financial journey, because one, two, three mistakes can really set you back, basically for the rest of your life, depending on how big of the mistake is. So that's why it's always good to kind of, when you're going for these bigger purchases, like how I mentioned for the house, right? So we have we bought our house during COVID. Could I move now? Could we move now? Yes, we could. Does it make sense to? Absolutely not. We have nothing really in place to be ready to move, unless something were to like come up, something were to happen, whatever the case may be. But right now, I'm not in an immediate rush to move, because my mortgage payments now can help me free up more money at this time to pay off more debt. My mortgage payments now can, help me, fuel my savings more. So, once I get through that phase, then I can really start heavily saving for when we are ready to upgrade our house. But I don't want to go in there unprepared. We took a risk with this house, but the risk only really made sense because during COVID, the interest rates were so low. I don't think we probably would have bought the house if, the interest rates weren't so low off of COVID. But again, delayed gratification, I'm looking for something bigger and better down the line, and I can wait, extra 5 so years in order to, get the house that I really want. So if you are going to go for a bigger purchase, one common rule that I see is, sleep on it. Give it about 24 hours to see, weigh out the pros and cons, see if you really need it, see if you don't really need it, see if you can save for it. What game plan are you going to create for you to save for it? So delayed gratification is one of the hardest parts about this journey. But if you're able to master this skill, man, it can take you to places that you never really even thought of do financially, because with the delayed gratification, that does play a part in helping you, not trying to keep up with the Joneses and not trying to fall into that lifestyle creep trap, because at that point you're already mentally prepared to, I already live without this, so I can go without this. Or if you are you trying to make that big purchase, do I really truly need it? And then if you do, and if you can afford it, okay, you can make that. You work for your money, so you do want to still celebrate yourself and celebrate your work. But yeah, so delayed gratification, that can really set you up for immediate success, and you can see that early on in your journey. All right, so we talked about lifestyle creep, talked about keeping up with the Joneses, and then we talked about delayed gratification. So all in all, this video is really just to show you that it's not always about the dollar amount that you make, but it's also about the percentage that you make, or the increase that you get. So for example, if you get a 2% increase in pay, look where you can take that 2% and apply it, because you already been living on what you're basically making now, right? So you already are accustomed to living off of that budget and living off that monthly income. So when you do get that increase, maybe you have about 3 or 4 smaller credit cards you need to pay off, right? Take that 2% and add that 2% to your credit card payments, and then you're really going to start to see those tackle down. And we talked about the snowball effect. You knocked out one credit card payment. Not only do you have the 2%, you also have that minimum payment that you were paying on that credit card that you can roll over to your next credit card, which is only going to then have a bigger snowball effect when you go into your third, fourth, whatever, how many credit cards that you have. That can really set you up. Then you can start taking that money, setting it aside, saving it, investing it, and then getting the bigger ticket items that you want over time. But that's how I perceive it. That's kind of my mindset moving forward. Again, it's not meant for you to be perfect. No one's perfect with their financial journey. If they do tell you that, they're lying. If they're telling you, oh, I made all these perfect moves, now I'm an instant millionaire, I wouldn't buy into it at all. So, everyone makes mistakes. That's human nature. That's part of life. It's how you can rebound for those mistakes. And when you go for your risk, you're going to have to take risks to make money. You just have to really educate yourself and, find your risk tolerance. So make sure that, this investment opportunity or whatever you're going to do, if that fits your risk tolerance. If it doesn't, then it may be something that you need to shy away from. But, again, to me, there's really no true right or wrong answer on when it comes to money. Everyone values it differently. Just because I look at it one way doesn't mean someone else has to. But if you do essentially want to grow your portfolio, if you do want to start making money, if you want to earn more than what you have in your income, then you have to invest. You have to invest not only into like the stock market and the real estate, but into yourself, into a side hustle. You need multiple streams of income in order to make that happen. If that's not your A game, as long as I would just put money into a 401k, let that build over time, call it a day. But yeah, so that's all for me today. Again, I'll always thank you for the support. Make sure you guys hit that share, and subscribe button. And I'll make sure to try to get my next video out within 2 weeks. So we got a couple events coming up for the candles. So, check us out on Etsy through our candle page located on Facebook. There's a link there as well. Thank you guys for the love and support, and have a good day.